for the midterm elections. All eyes are on them.
The big question, really the only question, do the Democrats hold on to the majority?
Can Republicans take control of the U.S. Senate?
Bottom line here is this is, as we say it every time, one of the most important elections in American history.
Good morning, Florida. This is a follow-up to the previous video, and we'll cover one of Florida's many congressional district elections. It's not one of the better ones, but it'll show you how to make an informed decision on your candidates. First, it's important to know Congress is made up of a Senate and House of Representatives, both at the state level and the federal level. Both introduce bills that impact our lives. We're going to take a look at my home district, the 26th of Florida. I found my district using the steps outlined in our first video. Check out How to Find Your Congress and District video on our page for more information. We're going to look at the contenders for this district, skim their issues page and compare them to another candidate who won their race against a corporate. Finally, we'll check out their donor list, remembering that endless money is one of the most dangerous issues in politics that works to silence our voices. Let's get started. Alright, so here we are at Ballotpedia's 26th Congressional District page. Let's take a look at the candidates here. I'm going to open up each individual page. Let's take a look at Demetrius Grimes first. We're going to go through his website here and highlight the different issues that he covers, as well as how to spot tactics that different candidates can use. So on his page, we see here Priorities page. This is where he keeps where he stands on all the issues. Let's take a look at his issues below. I've highlighted the details among all his flavor text. First off, we want to fight to improve our healthcare system and lead the effort to improve the Affordable Care Act, while working to reduce costs and provide coverage to the uninsured. He wants to lead the charge to provide a living wage to working people. He wants to protect Medicare and Social Security, making sure we live up to the promise we made to seniors. Now, he said a lot of different things here, but it's more important what he didn't say. Example, he said he wanted to protect Medicare and Social Security, but he never mentions expanding or pushing for making them any bigger. Medicare and Social Security are due to run out in about 10 years, due to Congress using that money and spending it elsewhere, as well as the rising cost of healthcare overall. He wants to lead the charge to provide a living wage to working people. He does this without saying specifically what he wants to raise the living wage to. Some candidates, very specific ones, will give you an exact number. A lot of them push on the fight for 15. Get that minimum wage up to $15 an hour. In Florida, $15 would be a very bare minimum in some parts of Florida, where the cost of rent and living are very high. By improving the Affordable Care Act, working to reduce costs and provide coverage to the uninsured. Now, while he wants to do this, he doesn't make any mention of Medicare for All or single payer, a very popular measure in the Progressive Party of Democrats. Here we can see him a little more specific. He wants to work to promote comprehensive immigration reform, including a pathway to citizenship for the 11 undocumented immigrants that live here. He also strives to give Dreamers permanent legal immigration status. Again, here we can see him more specific, fighting for universal background checks, age restrictions for those under 21, restoring an assault weapons ban we had here back in the 90s. You can actually look at the data and count the number of incidents as well as deaths, and see that the decade before and the decade after of the assault weapons ban had more gun deaths than during the ban, meaning that the ban was successful. Here he specifically wants to close the gun show and online sales loopholes, ban bump stocks, armor-piercing rounds, all very detailed information. Here, he says he's prepared to exercise good judgment and understanding the costs of war to ensure we're prepared to deter and defeat. It's very vague, but normally you mention cutting or slashing a defense or war budget, if that's what you plan on doing. You often use words like this if you plan on increasing or growing our already bloated military budget, very little of which ever seems to go to the Veteran Affairs Group. Well, let's look at all of his positions and where he stands. Let's skim the rest of the other candidates, just to get an idea of where their information is. Here's Debbie McChrystal Powell. And here's her website. I've highlighted some of the issues. They're found here, under Priorities. So in this paragraph, you can find that she's pledged to work with her colleagues to improve the Affordable Care Act and protect Medicare from Republicans who would want to raid it. Again, we see no action toward extending or improving Medicare or Medicaid, and no mention of Medicare for all or single payer. In this other paragraph on the economy, there's a little more specific text here. Boosting the economy by bringing good-paying jobs to South Florida, making sure that we get the skills we need through job training programs. So more government subsidies for job training or trade schools and such. She covers a few other issues here. Next, let's look at Carlos Curbelo, our current running member of the Representatives. Next, let's look at Carlos Curbelo, our current representative here in the 26th District. Here's his website. Clicking on the Issues page, we get a list of everything he stands for. Let's take a quick look at where he stands on military. Again, he mentions raising troop pay and streamlining military programs and equipment, while ensuring veterans have access to quality health care and services. Again, no specific mention, but he wants to increase military spending. Something that's been happening countlessly for the last few elections through various candidates on both Democrat and Republican lines. Let's continue down the list of candidates. Now, independents deserve as much attention as our Democratic and Republican candidates. They often bring issues and stances that push Democrats to the left or Republicans to the right and get them to yield to specific issues and have to take them on their policies. Unfortunately, Soraya Fox doesn't seem to be one of them. There doesn't seem to be a lot of information here. They don't have a website or a link. I did some digging and they specifically linked to this page in a magazine for their issues. I went ahead and pulled it up for you, but it seems that Foss just is a hardliner against illegal immigration, blames bureaucratic obstacles for preventing FEMA from getting to the keys and places for cleanup, and applauds the White House for various obligations and funding. Again, she links her website, unlike our other candidates, as a Facebook page. This is actually where I pulled up that document. There's nothing else on her Facebook page. Just some news articles and videos. This isn't how you run a campaign. You really need to provide more details than an issue page. An example of a good candidate that we're going to go over now is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. While not specifically listing her Facebook page as where you'd find information, she does include tabs under politics that show you where she stands on just about everything, including the proto-issue, or the most important issue, that is campaign finance reform. If we can get money out of politics, we can fix a lot that's going on in our country. Well, that's enough about our Facebook. Let's take a look at our actual page. Start at the very top. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Let me give you a little history on this character. She's a Democratic incumbent, a very progressive one at that, who defeated a $10 million candidate, donors in the $10 million level, with just $100,000. A fraction of the money they used. And she did it largely through this platform, and a lot of groundwork, grassroots work. Let's take a look at what she stands for, and how it's highlighted. Here's a perfect example of how to do your information and issues pages. Medicare for All. Immediately right there in the title you see what they're for. Improve and expand Medicare for All. Ethical, logical, and affordable path to ensuring no person goes without dignified health care. A couple of paragraphs, flavor text. You can see that you can count on Alexandria to fight for people-centered health care more than any other candidate. And then they give you some logic. They don't accept money from pharmaceutical lobbyists or private insurance companies. Further down, there's a specific bill that they'll support. Scrolling, there can be a lot of flavor text, even for some of the better candidates. But even here we see, at the very end of each section, they try and list a bill or an act that they'd support. Everything from pushing against luxury real estate housing, a huge issue here in Florida. It's something that our Florida runners could definitely look to copy or mimic for success. To the right to declare war belonging to Congress and pulling out of wars that we've illegally gone into. To ending the forever war by bringing our troops home and ending airstrikes that perpetuate terrorism. Reuniting military families. Pushing for a federal jobs guarantee program, setting a standard for employment at a $15 minimum wage, tied to inflation, full health care, child and sick leave. Much like our candidates in Florida, they're very specific on gun control, banning assault weapons, requiring domestic abusers and stalkers to surrender their weapons, mandated universal and background checks. That's just a look at some of the issues that they stand for. So there's two parts of a campaign when you're looking into a candidate. The first is where they stand on their issues pages, as we saw. The second is the amount of money they receive from citizens, wealthy citizens, and corporate super PACs. Let's take a look at some of them now. The main site that I recommend you check out this information is an organization called Open Secrets. It provides public information on campaign donors. Here's that same 2018 gubernatorial race. Here we can see Carlos Curbelo and Debbie Powell have raised the most, whereas Grimes and Foss have raised a fraction of each. I simply searched for Florida district, the district number, and the year of the race, and I pulled up this information. Now we can see more specific information by going into the Candidates page tab. Here we can see Carlos Curbelo gets most of his money from super PACs. $1 million, nearly two. The rest of it comes from wealthy individuals, giving large contributions. Next we see Debbie Powell. We can see that there's a little bit of money coming in from super PACs, but most of it does come from wealthy donors, a lot of large individual contributions. There's a significant amount of small donors, though. Well more than Carlos Curbelo. Next we have Dimitri Grimes. Here we see they have no PAC money. Very rare thing in our political system. They do have mostly large donors, though, and almost no small donors. And then Soraya Foss. It looks like they simply paid to run in this race, while never really putting much time or effort into getting donors or pushing where they stand. Without having a web page or informing your voters of where you stand, it's really hard to find anyone to support you. Now we did just look at the incumbents and their donors, but we can pull up more particular information, specifically from their PACs. Let's take a look at Carlos Curbelo's PACs. Looks like some of the organizations that donate to him are KKR, which when I look for seems to bring up a lot of red flags on bribery, fraud risk. And they're a real estate company. So an international real estate company donated $32,000 to Carlos Curbelo's campaign. Not a positive thing. Let's take a look at the rest of the contributors. Down here with Debbie, we've got Emily's list. A group that funds most Democrats candidates, but avoids some of the more hot-button ones, like Ocasio-Cortez. Let's take a look at Kids Medical Services. Sounds like a healthcare company down here in Florida. So pulling that company up under Yelp and the Better Business Bureau shows overwhelmingly negative reviews of abuse, costs, and charges that were not requested or intended for. And their support kind of goes up against their push for better medical services and healthcare. You're being supported by a corrupt medical organization. Odds are you will follow in their footsteps. Looking at the last candidate here, Dimitri Grimes, there doesn't seem to be anything particularly attention-calling. A lot of lumber, timber, social and entertainment groups, some universities, the Navy, the Army, with very low donations. And as for Soraya Foss, they failed to report any of their donors. There weren't many to begin with, but the very least a candidate is required to do is to provide this information. And that's just a look at one of the congressional districts. Hopefully one you don't have to worry about, as these candidates are very lackluster. There's no one particularly progressive or looking to make the lives of Floridians any easier in terms of jobs, healthcare, economics, or, as mentioned earlier, the proto-issue, that is money and politics. You can check out any of the other districts and support those candidates belonging to your own, or phone bank and text bank, telling friends and families of those other districts who you recommend they vote for, so that they can be more informed. Thanks again for checking out this video. We're going to go into a couple more details and issues, particularly the Florida gubernatorial race.
Chuck Colgan is fighting for you in Richmond.
I could stand here and tell you how I was born on a poultry farm.
Together, we can make West Virginia's economy take off.